and share my screen here. And let's start by looking at this plot that was prepared by our team member in Pakistan. Can everybody see the plot? Yeah, okay. And so this is a time series plot made presumably with Microsoft Excel. I'm pretty sure it was Excel. And what Ahmad is plotting here is in the blue is a median average of the blue sky sensors from there in Islamabad. And then in orange is the US Embassy reference monitor measuring the same thing over the same time window, time duration, about a 5-week period. So in the chat now, if I could ask you to please type, what are some things that you think are good about this plot? Some of the positive attributes. Let's start positive. And just type it into the chat. We don't need to talk about it. Give it another 20 seconds. Ten more seconds for you to type in and hit enter in the chat window, please. And when I say good about the plot, I'm thinking more in terms of visual aesthetics. Our goal today is to take a plot like this, so the default kind of plot that that comes out for Microsoft Excel, that Microsoft Excel does really a good job at, and then improve the aesthetic so that it's something that you all could show to your professor or present at a conference or put in a journal publication. So that's kind of the step we're trying to take today. So I'm just going to read from the chat. It is good that, you know, scientifically, it's great that the measurements have apparently a good trend, comparing with each other, positive correlation, very likely. And then as Hashna put, the date and time can be seen very clearly, right? Because Ahmad turned the axis, he rotated the axis labels 90 degrees so that they're not covering up each other as they would normally by default in Excel. And I'll show you how to do that if you haven't already learned it. And then the other thing that Tamim said is that he's able to clearly see both lines, right? There isn't one, often in Excel, if you use markers, whichever marker you plot first gets covered up by the marker that you plot second. Because of the colors chosen and the lines that Tamim chose, I'm sorry, that Ahmad chose, you could see both data sets pretty clearly. So now let's turn to the cons. What are some things that if you made a plot that you'd want to, and you first made a plot like this with Excel, that you'd want to improve it to do, or so that it would look better, more professional? And if you could type that into the chat, I'd appreciate it. And I'll give you a minute to do that. There's quite a few things that we could improve in this plot. I think you'll agree. So let's spend a minute really looking at it carefully and thinking, what would be better? What could we do to make Ahmed's plot better? Great. I got all a response from all the students. And Nora, you don't need to respond to every question since you're yourself a lecturer. So I'm just going to go through the responses here. Tamim wrote, hang on, let me just make sure I'm looking at the camera. Tamim wrote, decrease the thickness of the lines. Okay, yeah. So that maybe it's even more easy to distinguish the two data series. Make a less congested set of labels on the x-axis. Excellent, yeah, that may make it easier to read. Raiz said, label the axes in the column. Title is not clear. Yes, the axis title on the vertical axis, the y-axis here, is not clear about what is being compared. What is the attribute being compared? Maybe you and I, we know it's PM 2.5 micrograms per cubic meter, but anybody that you're showing this to, maybe if it's at a department meeting or just to your environmental science class, they won't know what that is. Gobi Shankar said, increase the time interval. Yep, same idea as Tamim, like make that x-axis less dense. And Hashna said, maybe remove the background. Okay. So there's one thing that none of you wrote, and I'll say it now, which bugs me when I see these plots coming out of Excel, and that is, take a look at these timestamps. We have 15th December at midnight, followed by 15th December at 1 p.m., then 16th December at 2 a.m., 16th December at 3 p.m. It seems that the x-axis labels are separated for some reason by 13 hours, which is a very awkward time interval. And it causes us not to be able to see, for example, if the peaks are happening in the morning, afternoon, middle of the night, because there's no correlation between the time labels and what the data being plotted. And so that's something also that is a big no-no. Whenever we show plots like this to our boss or to people at a conference or a paper, we don't want that. All right, so I'm going to stop that, and I'm going to pull over a data set that I have, and this is similar to what Ahmed was doing. He's comparing the blue sky data with some reference data, and he has a time column. If everybody has some data, maybe from that you want to plot, why don't you open it up in Excel so that while we're doing this class, you can be doing the similar steps and improving your plot as well. So get any data set that you have that at least has a time column and one analyte. If you have a second column with another analyte or a second instrument for the same analyte, that would be even better. I'll give you 15, 20 seconds to find such a file, 30 seconds to find such a file, while I do kind of the first basic steps and talk through some things. So pull up that Excel file and I'll just say what I'm saying here. So the first thing I'm going to do to make a plot is just highlight all the data. And then Excel has added these nice button here in the insert menu. It says recommended charts. We can look at some of those recommended charts. This is one that I've seen students plot before, and it kind of shows you an example of, whoa, the orange markers have completely obscured the blue markers. That's not great. And then the time axis labels are overlapping one another because by default, Excel isn't rotating that x-axis label. Oh, here's another one. Let's try that. What's going on with this default one? Well, that's interesting. That doesn't look like the data at all. It seems like it's sampling the data at some uniform time interval. And so we're not seeing the peaks and the valleys. We're just seeing whatever the data point value was at that uniform time interval, like 9 a.m. followed by 7 a.m. followed by 8 a.m. Wow, that's random. 10 a.m. I don't really understand why I would want to make a plot like that. So that's no good. And as we could go through a few other examples, but we'll realize quickly that none of the defaults really are suitable. And so what we're going to do instead is we're going to make a line plot using, in today's class, we could insert a scatter plot. And we'll choose this scatter plot to compare at least two sets of values or pairs of data. This would work even if you just have time and concentration, like what comes out of a standard blue sky CSV file. So don't worry if you don't have a column C. You could still do this exercise along with me. Click on the scatter plot now. And just so that we can see the plot on our screen, let's move the chart by right-clicking on it, click Move Chart, and place that chart in a new sheet so that we can see the entire plot in its full glory. And then now we're going to improve upon this plot in ways that were described. Is everybody with me so far? Give me a thumbs up if we're doing okay, or unmute yourself if there's a question or you need me to slow down. And I can pause the recording if you're taking a minute to get your own data file up. Should I do that? Give me a thumbs down if I should pause the recording so that, to buy you some time. Okay, I got a thumbs up from Gobi Shankar. Kashana's nodding. So we're going to go ahead. All right. So here's the default, not the recommended chart, but a default XY scatter plot that Excel has produced from these data. Let's do the first step, which Amma did very nicely, which is to double click on the x-axis. And let's rotate those x-axis labels by clicking the text options menu under format axis, then clicking on this text box, dialog box, and then clicking on text direction. And we'll rotate all the text 90 degrees. Whoops. Rotate it 270 degrees so that it is kind of facing south to north. All right, so those steps once again. I click on the x-axis, double click it to get the format axis dialog box to show up. Then click text options among the two choice menus. Then click the text box icon, and then click text direction and chose rotate to all text 270 degrees. Well, that's nice, except my time stamps are so long that they overrun the page. So how do I move that up? What I'll do is I'll click with the standard mouse button, left click on the plot area, and that highlights the entire chart area in one box, as well as the plot area in an inner box. And then I'll select this handle to the horizontal axis, and I'll select it by just hovering my mouse over the handle, which will give you a north-south, the two-sided cursor. Click and drag it a little bit up so that until I can see my entire x-axis label. Right? So the steps there were, I first, you can click off the slide, click off of the chart, left click on the chart, somewhere in the middle where there aren't any data points. You'll get handles to both the chart area and the plot area, and bring up the plot area base until you can see the entire x-axis label. All right, so now we've caught up with Ahmad almost. There's something else Ahmad did that was really good, and that was that he changed this scatter plot. Sorry, he changed this from dots to lines, which made it a little bit easier to see. I think we can do that fairly easily in Excel. We will simply click on any of the data here, and you know what, we can double click on it to make sure that the format data series dialog box shows up. Select under series options, the first icon, which is for fill and line. And then let's choose a solid line. We can do that as well for the, ooh, that was the orange data points. And by default, Excel gave me a blue line. That's not nice. I want to have the same colored line as my markers. So I went to color, clicked on the drop-down menu and chose orange so that it matches my points. Don't want to get confused between my blues and my oranges. I'm going to do the same thing for the blue. So if you missed it on the orange, you can watch me do the blue. Click on the blue points. Please click on all the blue points. Choose the fill and line icon, and then choose solid line. Okay, wonderful. Are we doing okay so far? Right? Probably everything I've done so far is you've done most of this already, so it's nothing new yet. But if you stick with me to the end, which will be another 10 minutes, hopefully we'll get to a couple of new and useful things. So now we're still not caught up with Ahmed's plot because we were able to see both blue and orange line on his plot, and ours, the orange line's covering the blue, and that's partially because our orange data points are still there as circles. I don't want those circles. I just want the line like Ahmed did. I thought that was a really good thing. Oh, there's one more problem with this. Silly Excel. By default, it made my line orange, the one that I wanted it to be blue. So I got to go back to that color. All right, there we go. Now we got a blue line and an orange line. All right, now let's get rid of these points. Once again, I'll click on the data. Again, go back to Format Data Series. And this time, instead of choosing the line menu, I'm going to click the marker menu. And I'm going to choose marker options and say none. And I'll do that again with the orange. So if you missed it with the blue, you'll see it this time. Click on the orange data points, select the the line and fill and line icon. And now there's two submenus, line and marker. By default, it shows you the line color, but we want to get rid of those markers, which are little dots. So we'll click on marker and click marker options and click none. And that gets rid of the blue dots, just like Ahmed did. Okay, moving along. Raiz mentioned in the chat at the start that one thing that Ahmed's plot was missing was some indication of what this vertical axis attributes are. How do we add the vertical axis label? There's several ways to do it in Microsoft Excel. The one that I like most, which is in their newer versions of Excel, these last 5 or 6 years, is if you click on the chart area, you'll see these three icons in the upper right-hand corner. And if you click on the plus symbol there, you'll get a whole menu of chart elements. I'd like to add, in my case, axis titles. So I'll select axis titles, but I actually just want the vertical axis title. So let me see if I go to this triangle. Oh, there we go. I just want the primary vertical axis title. So I'm just going to choose that. And you can see here in the next to the y-axis, an axis title box that showed up. And in it, I can type in my axis title. Let me make it big so everybody on Zoom can see. I'll make it nice and bold. And once again, now the axis title is overlapping with the Y-tick labels. So in order to move those Y-tick labels in, just like we wanted to move the time labels in, I just have to click on the plot area, select the handle to the plot area edge, and bring it in just a tad so that it's not overlapping with my x-axis title. Now I can double click on the x-axis title and sorry, PM 2.5 concentration. How about that? And give it a label. Within axis labels, titles, and legends in Excel, you can format the text. So of course, 2.5 should be formatted in subscript. We all know how to do that for Microsoft Word. Just click on the home menu, select font and subscript. Same thing for the 3 in micrograms per cubic meter. That should be superscript. And these are such easy things, it's inexcusable not to do it when you're making a plot that you're going to show to your boss or to a collaborator. I use the letter U when I was typing in micrograms per cubic meter, just so I could get a placeholder in there. But really, that should be the Greek letter mu, Greek letter mu. How do I get mu? I just go to the insert menu, select symbol, and then select the Greek letter mu or micro sign. All right, now our vertical axis is labeled. Couple other easy things we could do is make our vertical axis tick labels a little bit larger so that they are viewable by whoever we're presenting them to. So I'm going to take it up to maybe 14 font. All I did there was I clicked on the vertical axis and automatically was able to format it using the standard formatting buttons. I didn't have to go to format axis at all. And then I'm going to do the same thing with my x-axis label, just make it a little bit bigger so that it's viewable. All right, so far we've reproduced the plot to the level that Ahmed had created for Islamabad, and we've improved it one notch by adding a vertical axis label. Okay. Now let's get into some of the more nuanced things. We all noticed that the y-axis, sorry, the horizontal axis tick labels were shoot. Let me add one more thing. Ahmed has his legend down here, which is the default in Excel for scatter plots. But it would be nice if we could put the legend somewhere over here in the upper right, because studies have shown that when audiences look at a slide or a plot, our eyes are naturally drawn to the upper right corner of the plot. So you always want to put some of your most important information on the upper right, be that text notes about a plot if you're putting a plot in PowerPoint, or in this case, the legend if you're just plotting data. So how do I do that? I select the legend. And when I do, I get a format legend dialog box here, and I'm going to stick it in the top right. And usually by default, Excel has this box unclicked, which makes the legend to be off to the side of the plot. I've changed my default so that I like to have my legend overlapping with the chart. My PhD advisor taught me something about information density, and that is that every plot that you make, you want that plot to convey as much useful information to the reader in as little space as possible. So I don't want to waste this margin on the legend because it'll create a bunch of white space down below it. I'd rather have my legend overlapping with my plot as shown here. And again, that was accomplished just by clicking on this checkbox here. Now I'm going to grow the font size of the legend because that's very important for everybody to be able to see that legend. And then I'll just move it to a spot where it's easy to read. If you don't want grid lines going through your legend, you can simply go to the fill and line menu here and fill the legend with a solid white color. You can even put a box around your legend by adding a solid line, and we recommend black or gray, not using colors unnecessarily because that just distracts the audience. So don't put a colorful box around it. My son, a 12-year-old youngest son, he loves getting on Google Docs or Google Sheets and just using all the different fonts and making his documents really colorful and stuff, which is fun when you're young. But when you're presenting to a professional audience, you want to make the slide or plot in such a way that it's very easily digestible to the audience without any distracting elements. You want the audience focusing on what's important scientifically about the plot. Okay, so we've formatted our legend. Now, coming back to the thing that stumps most students, and I haven't seen yet a single student in our team do this on the first try, is getting our x-axis labels to be equidistant apart. In this case, I lucked out. Excel saw that I have so much data that it put tick marks at midnight. But look at this. Look at this white column of nothing over here and over here. I don't want that. That's reducing the information density of my plot. In fact, in this case, just for this example, I don't really want to show this big spike. So I'm going to show my data over this time window in here in the middle so that we can see a little bit more detail. Kind of like Ahmed's plot was 5 weeks. I don't want to have, whatever this is, 7 weeks of data. I'm just going to narrow in on these last 5 weeks. How do I do that? So the first step is I click on the x-axis. And then I go to axis, in the format axis dialog box, I'll see the axis options menu and click on the fourth icon there, which says axis options. To set the limits on the x-axis, we need to change these x min and x max values. And I'd love it for it to be December 5th to January 7th. But unfortunately, if I type December 5th into here, Excel won't know what to do with it. It gives me December 5th, 2022. Oh, let me try that again. I've never realized that I could do it this way. This is super awesome. Oh, awesome. I could just type in the date in an Excel readable, human readable format. So I used 12/5/2021 and reset it, and it gave me, it starts it off at December 5th. Well, that makes my job a lot easier than I thought. You used to, in earlier versions of Excel, you had to figure out how to get that number, but now it's changing the text to number automatically. So I'd like to end on January 6th. Maybe one day after, oopsies. What did I do? Okay, I did 2021. It is January 7th, 2022 in my case. Okay, cool. Now I've got all the data that I want to look at here. I'm going to shrink the y-axis because now my data no longer spans up to 500 micrograms per cubic meter. It only goes up to 120. And so I'm going to double click on my y-axis and change my y limits to go from 0. Sorry, I shouldn't have done that. To go up to, let's say I want 140. All right, cool. Got all my data now. Okay, cool. Now I've got still an issue here. I'm gonna stop share here so I can make a point and try to do what was in the example. Many times your plots will not automatically be spaced equal days apart, like in Ahmed's case. So I want to do an example of that. There we go. Come back to sharing my screen. There we go. A lot of times Excel will do something wonky like this, right? Very similar to what we saw in the example, right? The time keeps changing every day, and it gives us this really kind of unprofessional look. Well, wouldn't it be nice if I had a tick mark every couple days? How do I do that? I'll double click on the x-axis. And down here, we're under axis options, we already changed the bounds, right? We've set the dates that we were interested in. But here, the major X ticks are, for some reason, spaced 1.2 days apart, which is a very awkward, awkward spacing. Let me try spacing them 1 day apart and see how that looks. Much better. It even puts grid lines every day at midnight. But now I've introduced another problem. If every tick label is exactly at midnight, do I really need to tell the audience that it's December 5th at midnight, December 6th at midnight, December 7th at midnight? No, once again, that's reducing the information density of my plot. It's saying midnight over and over again 30 times. So how do I get rid of that? In order to get rid of that, in the same menu, I'll go all the way down to the number choice, the number menu option. And under number, you have various ways you can format your x-axis label. By default, Excel has given me the month, day, year, hours, and minutes. Well, in South Asia, in a lot of places, we don't say the date in month, day, year, right? You don't say January 5th, you say 5th of January. So we'll go in the format code here and change that to DM year. I just edited the last box there. Instead of MDYYYY, I put D/M/YYYY. And voila, the dates all change. I'm gonna make them a little bit bigger so you can see better. That was a bit of a distraction. What I really wanted to do was get rid of the zeros, all the midnight time points. Well, that's, I'm sure you've guessed by now, easily done by simply erasing the H:MM. Now, a word of caution. You only want to remove the hours and minutes after you've confirmed that every single x-axis label is being shown at the exact same time. If there was 1 a.m., then 2 p.m., then 3 a.m., then 4 p.m., like in Ahmed's, and he removed the times, that would be a very, very misleading plot. Is that clear? I'm seeing a couple nods. So I first made sure that my major unit X ticks are spaced exactly whole numbers apart, because Excel treats dates as numerics, where each whole number starts at midnight. So 0.25, if you have a smaller data set, let's say you're plotting 5 days of data, we can look at that in a sec. Major ticks of 0.25 would be 3 hours apart, a quarter of a day. And if you choose 1 day, then you're okay with deleting the HMM here, as I'm suggesting we do now. Okay, let's compare this to the plot that we started with and see if we've made the improvements that we talked about. We definitely sorted out this problem. We definitely labeled our y-axis. We've improved the positioning and formatting of our legend. The title could use some work, but I'll leave that to you all to decide what title you want, or if you want a title at all. In my case, I like to put my titles on when I import the chart into PowerPoint, because PowerPoint has even more flexibility in how you title it and where you place the title. I might want to put the title right up here to make the information density even higher, rather than wasting white space up top. And I can do that really easily in PowerPoint by just adding a text box, right? And just paste that title right there. And so you can do all kinds of further beautification. But the last thing that I want to share for this class, and I apologize for going more than 10 minutes over what I expected, is to now just imagine that we didn't have many, many days of data, but maybe just 4 or 5 days, which often happens. And so give me a second to gin up that. 4, 4, 5. And let's suppose this is our data series. Now this is the type of misleading plot I mentioned before, because it looks like these tick labels would, an audience member would assume that these are all at midnight, but in fact, if I add the time, if I go back here to date and time, I think it is. If I get the full date and time, I'll see that they're all at noon. They just, by default, Excel puts the ticks at the same timestamp as the very first point in the plot. And so now let's do the case where I want to actually label them every 6 hours. So 6 hours is a quarter of a day. I misspoke earlier, saying that a quarter of a day is 3 hours. That was wrong. But I can change it to a quarter of a day. And now I've got my hour, sorry, my month, day, year, as well as my hours and minutes. Okay, now a question for the audience to make sure you've been paying attention. What information, what aspect of this plot is redundant now that we could improve to reduce the, increase the information density? What aspect of this x-axis label? Or where's the white space that we got to get rid of? You can type it in the chat or just unmute and say so. There's 2 things I'm noticing, maybe 3, if you want to be really picky. So Vishankar's looking at it, thinking. Ashna's found something. You can just say it, you don't have to type. Raiz, do you see it? Where's the information density lacking here? I mean, just unmute yourself and speak up. And this is the last thing we'll do today.
Maybe we can set the bound level of y-axis to 80 or 100.
Perfect. Yes, we have all this white space up here because we've zoomed in on a few days that don't have those high concentrations. Thanks, Tamim. Well, we'll just do that by clicking the y-axis, choosing the axis options and setting that upper bound of 80 as Tamim recommended. Okay, good. We got rid of that white space. Where else? Anybody else? Tamim answered correctly. There's more places that we have information density leakage, wastage. There's something redundant down here. Very redundant, annoyingly redundant.
The year 2021?
Yeah, every single date stamp has year 2021. I don't like that. So I click on that x-axis, hit number, and just wipe out the y. And now I've got some white space down here, so I'll choose this plot handle and drag it back down to fill up the space. Great, right? So that's right. You might say, well, the 00s are redundant as well. Yeah, you could change that to be noon and 6 p.m., midnight, 6 a.m., and make it even more elegant and kind of user-friendly. But I won't do that today. That would take too much time. But the amount of time you want to spend on your plot depends on how valuable of a presentation you're making. If it's to your boss or to your professor or to your international collaborators, you probably want to make it at least this quality. If you're then presenting it in a paper, a journal article, or an international conference, maybe you want to take the extra step to figure out how to make it midnight, noon, 6 p.m. and so forth. So it's not showing in this army time. You know, you could do even better than that. You could have the tick marks be, you could just say, even now the 12s are all redundant, right? They're all December 12th. I'm sorry, they're all month of December and different days, so you could even improve upon that. But for today's class, I'm going to end it there. I'm going to stop the recording and take any questions that you might have. And if you need to go,